All right, guys, let's go ahead and wrap this week up. We are here for day 3 of week 13. All right, so that fuzzy white stuff that made Alabama so rich. So up until Alabama became a state, most people felt like they were living on the wild frontier. And for a pretty good reason, because they basically were living on the wild frontier. There's a whole lot of land that was undeveloped. There's a whole lot of land, period, that people had not even found yet, that people weren't living on yet. There's a lot of farmland, but nothing really substantial as far as cities go. So during the 20 to 30 years that Alabama was granted statehood, things really kicked up and started to change. Backwood villages became really neat and tidy towns, and rough frontiersmen became lawyers and doctors, and apparently lawyers again, because Miss Stevenson likes to type things 2 times. Sorry. All right, newspapers were printed so villagers could read the news, and log cabins were being traded out for brick houses. So things were really starting to change in Alabama. What made all of this change happen, though? What made this all possible? Yep, that fuzzy white stuff made Alabama rich. What am I talking about? What's that fuzzy white stuff? Yes, cotton, what our clothes are made of, all the cotton fields you see. Cotton is what made Alabama so rich. With the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney in 1793, cotton farmers realized that they could produce much more than they had been. And of course, when you're able to produce more, cotton becomes cheaper and cotton goods become more popular, because when things are more affordable, they become more popular because more people are able to get them. This led to more cotton being planted and more enslaved people needed so that they could harvest the cotton. So unfortunately, as a result of that, slavery did increase in the 1800s, just before it was abolished. So big plantations, we talked about plantations earlier in the week, about how the plantations in the South were part of the reason why the slave population was so much bigger in the South and was a little bit more appealing than it was in the North. So it wasn't long before frontier Alabama was just dotted with these cotton plantations. A plantation is just a place with a really large amount of land for farming. So just think of them as really, really big farms. Here is a picture of a plantation house, actually, that is in Alabama. Most big plantations were just like little towns almost. They had their own blacksmiths, their own cobblers, which are people who fix shoes, and they had gardens that were big enough to feed armies. But they kind of had to be like that. They kind of had to be self-sufficient, which means that they kind of ran themselves, because it took more than a quick trip to the grocery store to get the things that they needed. You couldn't just run up to the store and, oh, let me get this. No, to run plantations, you needed a lot of stuff. So most of their supplies actually had to be ordered from clear across the ocean and took a really long time to get there. Because back then they didn't have planes to just fly it in a few hours. They had to wait for ships. Okay, so slavery in Alabama's Cotton Kingdom. It's really tough to talk about crops in Alabama without talking about slavery, unfortunately. Planters did use slave labor to work their fields and to plant, care for, and harvest their cotton and crops. They also did other tasks around the plantation as well. They did not just work in the fields and work on the farm. They also helped at the house with dishes and with their children. If the people who owned the plantation had any, they helped with cooking and cleaning and all those daily chores as well. Most Alabama farmers only owned 1 or 2 slaves and worked right along with them in the fields. So for most Alabama farmers, it wasn't about owning a slave. It was about having the help that they needed, because they worked right alongside with them. It's not like they were sitting back and just watching them work their cotton fields for them. They were seeing them as needed and appreciated help and working right alongside with them. However, there was a really, really small part of the population that were wealthy enough to own anywhere from 20 to 100 slaves. And of course, if they owned that many, they did not do a lot of the work themselves. All right, guys, that is it for this week. That is going to wrap it all up. I hope you have learned a lot. We have not even really touched what we could have talking about slavery. I feel like slavery is one of those things that we could talk about and talk about and talk about because it's such a big part of our history. But that is all I've got for you this week. So make sure that you are checking your folders daily. Even tomorrow when we don't have a new lesson, you still will have an assignment. So check it tomorrow. Your quiz is on Friday. Come back to these lessons if you need any refreshers. You guys enjoy the rest of your week and have a great weekend.